Let me tell you about the summer of 1882. That is when the Garrison family learned what it truly means to stand your ground. I've been spinning yarns about the frontier for longer than most of you have been alive. But this one stays with me like the smell of sage after rain. You see, back then, we didn't have fancy lawyers on speed dial or police just minutes away. When trouble came calling, you either faced it with your neighbors beside you, or you lost everything. Sarah and Luke Garrison were good folks, the kind who'd share their last bit of flour and never mention it again. But that summer, they discovered that sometimes being good isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be strong, clever, and just a little bit meaner than the devil at your door. Sarah knew something was wrong the minute Luke's coffee cup started its dance against the saucer. Not a big production. Mind you, Luke would sooner die than make a fuss, but after 7 years of marriage, she'd learned to read his hands like farmers rid clouds. The morning light came through their kitchen window all golden and peaceful, catching the steam from his cup like it was trying to paint something holy. But that tremor in his fingers told a different story. "Storm coming?" she said, not really asking, while she set fresh coffee before him. The pot was the blue enamel one her mother had given them, chipped now at the rim but still good. Luke's jaw did that grinding thing like he was chewing on words he couldn't spit out. Maybe. His right hand pressed flat on the pine table, the one he'd built their first winter when the snow trapped them inside for 3 weeks straight. "Need to check with Hoffman about the grain order." That's when little Emma appeared in the doorway, 9 years old and sharp as a new penny, her nightgown hanging all cattywampus where she'd dressed herself. "Mama, the milk tastes funny." Now, you might think that's nothing, kids complain about everything. But Sarah's wooden spoon stopped mid-scrape in that pot of burnt porridge. She kept her face smooth as fresh butter, but I tell you, her shoulders pulled tighter than fence wire. Funny how, sweet pea. Like when I held pennies in my mouth that time, all metal-like and wrong. Luke and Sarah's eyes met over that child's head, and 30 years of frontier living passed between them in that look. Copper in the well water meant minerals stirred up, or it meant someone had been messing with things that ought not be messed with. "I'll check the well after town, Bush," Luke said, pushing back from the table. His coffee sat there untouched, surface trembling, like a spooked colt. Sarah watched him strap on his work belt, noticed how his hand hesitated over the empty spot where his army colt used to ride. 5 years since he'd sold it to buy seed corn, swearing he was done with guns forever. But you know what they say, the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. "Take Emma to Martha's on your way," Sarah said, casual as discussing weather. She promised to teach her beadwork. "Can't I come to town?" Emma's lower lip pushed out like a little shelf. "Not today." Luke's voice came out harder than intended, like bark off a pine tree. He caught himself, gentled it down, crouching to Emma's level. "Help Mrs. Sundown with her boys. Thomas needs practice with his letters. And you're the best teacher he's got." After they left, Sarah stood at that window watching dust trail behind their wagon until it was just a memory on the morning air. The quiet that settled then wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that comes before lightning strikes. She returned to her pot, scraping harder now, the sound filling up all that dangerous silence. Black char came off in flakes like it was telling her something. That's when she saw it in the window glass, a reflection that shouldn't be there. A figure on horseback at their gate, sitting still as death itself. The rider wore a black coat despite the heat already building. His hat tilted so she couldn't see his face proper. But Lord help her, she knew that posture. That particular way of holding the reins with just 3 fingers, like he was too good to grip them proper. Silas McKenna. Now, the last time Sarah had laid eyes on that man, her sister Rebecca had been alive and laughing, bright as a new coin at Sunday dinner in Abilene. 2 weeks later, just 2 short weeks, Rebecca was dead, face down in a horse trough behind Mrs. Pritchard's boarding house. The sheriff, God rest his soul, called it an accident. Said she'd taken too much laudanum for her headaches, gotten confused in the dark, lost her way. But Rebecca never took laudanum. That girl wouldn't even take whiskey when the tooth puller came around. And she'd been afraid of water since childhood, when she'd nearly drowned in the Republican River. Sarah's hand found the butcher knife before her mind even formed the thought. She stood there, 12 inches of good German steel in her grip, watching McKenna through that window glass like he was a rattler coiled to strike. He touched his hat brim, a gentleman's greeting that made her stomach turn sour as last week's milk, then wheeled his horse back toward the town, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. The burned smell from the pot grew stronger. pulling her back. When she looked down, she'd scraped clean through the black to raw iron underneath, metal gleaming like a threat. At Hoffman's General Store, Luke studied the ledger like it might change its story if he stared hard enough. 3 names with X marks beside them, the kind of marks that meant paid in full, but felt more like grave markers. The Morrison place, the Hendricks spread, the Yunt family's homestead, all sold in the last month, quick as you please. Peculiar thing, old Hoffman said, not meeting Luke's eyes as he measured out flour. The German's thick fingers trembled slightly, spilling a few grains on the counter. All 3 families had troubles right before selling. Morrison's cattle got into local weed. Though there ain't none grows near his pasture, I've walked that land 20 years and never seen a sprig. Local weed doesn't just appear, Luke said carefully. No, sir, it does not. Hoffman tied the flour sack with more force than needed, like he was strangling something. Then the Hendricks had that fire. Started in 3 places at once, now you tell me how that happens natural. And the Youngs found their well poisoned with enough alkali to kill a full-grown steer in minutes. Luke's gut clenched like a fist. Poisoned how? Someone dumped 50 pounds of the stuff down there, near as Doc Carpenter could figure. Hoffman finally looked up, and Luke saw fear living in the old man's eyes like a sickness. Of course, the railroad company bought them out anyway, charitable of them. Wouldn't you say, Dubdaw? Railroads coming through here. Surveyor's been around. Fellow named McKenna. Hoffman leaned closer, voice dropping to barely a whisper. He was asking about you yesterday. Said he knew you from the war. Said you served together in Georgia. The store seemed to tilt slightly, like the world had shifted on its axis. Luke gripped the counter edge hard enough to leave marks in the soft pine. What did you tell him? Nothing to tell. But Luke, Hoffman pulled out a letter from beneath the counter, hands it over careful-like. My brother in Denver. He writes that this McKenna fellow, he's got a reputation. Gets land for the railroad however he needs to, legal or otherwise, and the families that don't sell willing. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Luke paid for his goods, mind racing like a spooked horse. Outside, the sun felt too bright, the street too exposed. Like every shadow might hold a threat. His wagon sat where he'd left it, but something was different. Took him a moment to spot at a playing card tucked under the bench seat. Its corner lifting in the breeze, the ace of spades. The death card. The same card McKenna's unit used to leave on doors before they burned houses in Georgia. Before they did things Luke still couldn't speak about, even to Sarah in the dark of night when the memories came calling. Emma found the crow on their porch when Thomas Sundown brought her home near sunset. The bird was laid out neat as you please, like someone had taken time to arrange it just so. Its neck was twisted full around, head facing backward in a way that wasn't natural, wasn't right. Don't touch it, Thomas said quickly. The 16-year-old had his mother's careful ways, his late father's watchful eyes that never missed a detail. It's a message. What kind of message? Emma's voice came out smaller than she wanted, and she hated that. The bad kind. The kind that says worse is coming. Sarah appeared in the doorway, took in the dead bird and Thomas's rigid posture and Emma's pale face all in one sweep. Her heart might have been hammering, but her voice came steady as bedrock. Thomas, would you bury it out past the garden where the old apple tree used to stand? Emma, come inside. But Emma was already looking beyond the crow to where her pa stood by the barn. He had the Spencer rifle in his hands, the one he'd swore he'd never touch again, cleaning it with the automatic motions of a man who'd done it 1,000 times in places he'd rather forget. The gun oil smell drifted across the yard, sharp and metallic, like blood pennies in your mouth. Mama, Emma whispered. Why's Papa got the gun out? Sarah's hand settled on her daughter's shoulder, steady as stone, warm as fresh bread. Because sometimes, sweet pea, good people have to be ready for bad ones. It's not the world we want, but it's the world we've got. That night after Emma was asleep, and Lord knows it took 3 stories and 2 songs to settle her, Sarah and Luke sat at the kitchen table with the lamp turned low. The shadows danced on the walls like memories trying to take shape. Luke had spread out 3 pieces of paper, each one a piece of a puzzle they didn't want to solve. The death card from his wagon, its edges worn like it had traveled far. A formal letter from the railroad company offering to buy their land for 1/10, its value insulting. really, if it wasn't so threatening. And Jake Morrison's signature on a bill of sale dated the day before his cattle mysteriously found the loco weed. "It's McKenna," Luke said, though they both already knew. "Captain Silas McKenna. I was under his command when he—" His voice dried up like a creek in August. "When he what?" Sarah kept her voice gentle, but firm. 20 years of marriage earned you the right to certain truths." Luke's hands started their tremor again. Sarah noticed his wedding ring catching the lamplight as his fingers shook. Sherman was burning his way to the sea. That was strategy, awful as it was. But McKenna, he took it personal, found families that were hiding their valuables, their food stores. He had methods of making them tell where things were hidden. Luke stopped, swallowed hard. Then he'd burn the houses anyway. Sometimes with... He couldn't finish. Didn't need to. Sarah reached across the table, covered his shaking hands with her steady ones. Her mother's hands, her grandmother's hands that had delivered babies and closed eyes and held together what wanted to fall apart. "He's not going to do that here." "How can you know that, Sarah?" "How can you possibly know? Because you're not the same man you were then, and you're not alone now." She squeezed his hands until the trembling stopped, like she could press strength into him through her palms. "We need to warn the others." If McKenna's working his way through the valley, a sound from outside cut her short. Footsteps on the porch, deliberate and slow. Then a knock. 3 measured raps that sounded like a funeral drum. Luke reached for the Spencer, but Sarah was already moving to the door, the butcher knife hidden in her skirt folds where it couldn't catch the light. "Who's there?" she called, voice steady as Sunday morning. "Mrs. Garrison?" The voice was cultured, pleasant as honey cake. "Silas McKenna. I believe you knew my dear friend, your late sister Rebecca." Sarah's free hand found Luke's arm, gripped it hard enough to bruise, through the door. They could hear McKenna's soft chuckle, like he'd just told himself a private joke. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said, polite as a preacher. "We have so much to discuss, about the past and the future." His footsteps retreated, unhurried, each one placed with care. Then, almost as an afterthought, "That's a beautiful daughter you have." Rebecca would have been so proud. They stood frozen until the hoofbeats faded into darkness. Then Sarah turned to Luke, and he saw something in her face he'd never seen before in 20 years. Not fear, not even anger, something harder, more dangerous, the look of a mother wolf when something threatens her cubs. "Tomorrow," she said, each word placed careful as stones, "we start fighting back." Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Luke's knees creaked as he crouched beside the fence line. The cedar posts he'd sunk 3 feet deep last spring, good posts, cost him 2 weeks' labor lay pulled clean out. Arranged in formation, 4 rows of 5, military precise, like soldiers at morning inspection. The morning sun caught movement in the sage. Thomas Sundown stood 30 yards off, bent low, fingers tracing something in the dirt. The boy moved like his Cheyenne mother had taught him, reading the ground's story better than most folks read newspapers. "Mr. Garrison," Thomas kept his voice low, though nobody else was near. 3 horses. 1 rider walks heavy on his left side. Drags it some. Luke already knew who dragged that foot. Atlanta, 1864. McKenna took grape shot in the hip during the siege. The surgeon wanted to take the leg, but McKenna refused. Said he'd rather die whole than live in pieces. The Hereford bull stood wrong in the near pasture, head down but not grazing, facing the water trough but not drinking. Luke had traded 2 horses and his winter wages for that bull, prime breeding stock from Kansas City. "Stay back," Luke warned as Thomas approached. He dipped his finger in the trough, touched it to his tongue. The burn came immediate alkali, strong enough to blister. His tongue went numb, then fiery hot. "They poisoned it last night?" Thomas asked. "No." Luke pointed to the waterline, the white crust forming rings. "Yesterday, maybe day before. See how it's concentrated at the bottom? They knew I wouldn't check close until—" Sarah's voice carried sharp from the house, cutting through the morning air like a blade. Sarah's hands worked the bread dough, knuckles pressing and folding, but her mind stayed on McKenna's name in Hoffman's register. She'd seen it while Luke studied the ledger, that particular handwriting with its forward slant. The way he made his Ms. look like mountain peaks, same as the love letters he'd written Rebecca. "Mama, you're hurting it." Emma stood beside the table, flour dusting her nose, watching Sarah pound the dough hard enough to shake the salt box. Just working out the... Sarah stopped. Through the window. Sheriff DeWitt's piebald mare stood tied at their gate. But DeWitt himself was nowhere to be seen. That mare never stood so still unless the kitchen door opened without a knock. McKenna filled the doorframe, morning light behind him turning him into a dark shape. His coat was dusty, but his boots were polished bright as fresh tar. That detail stuck in Sarah's mind. What kind of man polished his boots for a ranch visit, Mrs. Garrison? He removed his hat, showing teeth white as tombstones. Or should I say Miss Rebecca's little sister? Sarah's hand found the rolling pin. Solid oak her father had turned on his lathe. Sheriff DeWitt, no, you're riding his horse. The sheriff's been called away. Family emergency. McKenna stepped inside uninvited, his left foot dragging across the threshold with a soft scraping sound. His wife's heart gave out sudden like. Happens to women her age. Mary DeWitt's 34 years old. Like I said, things happen sudden out here. Emma pressed against Sarah's skirts. McKenna's pale eyes dropped to the child, lingered on her face, her hair, the way she stood. You have Rebecca's look about you, he told Emma. Same pretty hair, same green eyes that could cut glass. Sarah shifted, blocking his view. State your business. The railroad needs your water rights. The aquifer under your land. No? McKenna's smile never wavered. You haven't heard my offer. Don't need to. He reached into his coat. Sarah's grip tightened on the rolling pin, but he only produced a peppermint stick, red and white stripes catching the light like a barber pole. For the little one, he said, setting it on the table. Rebecca always loved peppermints. The smell hit Sarah like a slap peppermint. And something else. Something bitter underneath. Rebecca's room that last night had reeked of peppermint. They'd found 3 crushed candy sticks in her pocket when they pulled her from the trough, the red dye staining her fingers like blood. Get out. McKenna replaced his hat with careful precision. 3 days, Mrs. Garrison. After that, things get unpleasant.
Okay.
The door closed soft behind him. Sarah heard his dragging step cross the porch, leather creaking as he mounted DeWitt's mare. Emma's voice came small. Mama? Why did he know Aunt Rebecca's song? Before Sarah could answer, Luke burst through the door, Thomas behind him. Luke's face had gone gray as old dishwater. The bull's dying, alkali in the water, and Sarah. He stopped, seeing her expression. He was here. She nodded toward the peppermint stick. Luke's jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. A scratching sound rose from beneath their feet. From the root cellar, like fingernails on wood. Emma's eyes went wide. There's someone in our cellar. The scratching stopped. Luke's hand moved to the knife on his belt while Sarah pulled Emma behind her. Thomas already had the cellar door's iron ring in his grip, rust flaking onto his palm. Could be a raccoon, Thomas whispered, though his knuckles were white on the ring. Luke shook his head. The scratching started again, deliberate, rhythmic. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. That's Morse code, Luke breathed. Distress signal from the war. He yanked the door open. The hinges screamed. Jake Morrison lay crumpled on the wooden steps, his shirt dark with blood from chest to belt. His fingernails were torn ragged, blood caking the splinters where he'd scratched at the door. Sweet Jesus! Luke dropped down beside him. Sarah grabbed clean dish towels from the sideboard, her grandmother's towels with the blue embroidery. No. Time. Morrison's lips were white as flour, cracked down the middle. McKenna. He made me. The fire. What fire? Luke pressed the towels against the wound. Blood seeped through immediately, warm and thick. Your barn. Tonight. Morrison grabbed Luke's shirt, left red handprints on the blue cotton. 20 men, coal oil already placed. He wants you to watch it burn. With them inside. Who inside? Morrison's eyes rolled toward Sarah and Emma. His meaning landed like a punch to the gut. Thomas, ride for Doc Carpenter, Sarah ordered. The boy was already moving. No, doctor, Morrison gasped. Let me die right. I got things to say. Sarah knelt beside him, her church dress soaking up blood that spread like spilled wine. Then say them. Morrison fumbled inside his coat. pulled out papers spotted with blood but still readable. Evidence! McKenna's working with Senator Clayton. Railroad grants worth millions. They killed 18 families from here to Denver. Luke took the papers. Hands steady now. Names, dates, amounts paid. McKenna's signature on everyone. That Mountain Peak M unmistakable. Why? Jake! Luke's voice came out rough as sandpaper. We ate from the same pot at Antietam. You saved my life at Whoa. Farm failed. Morrison's breath whistled through his teeth. Wife took the boys back to her mother in Ohio. McKenna offered good money to burn out squatters. He called them. Didn't know it was you, till I saw your face in town yesterday. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, watching the red pool spread across her mother's clean floor, seeping into the cracks between boards. Sarah noticed, moved to block her view, but Emma stepped around her, deliberate as a grown woman. Are you sorry? Emma asked Morrison straight out, the way children do when they haven't learned to dance around truth. Morrison's eyes fixed on the girl. A tear cut through the dirt on his cheek. Every breath I got left. Little miss. Every breath. His breathing went shallow, quick, like a bird's. Luke had heard that sound in field hospitals, in mud-filled trenches where boys called for their mothers. Tell my wife, Morrison started. Blood bubbled on his lips. Tell her I tried to make it right. He died looking at Emma, like her young face might offer absolution he'd never find elsewhere. Sarah closed his eyes with steady fingers, then stood. Emma, go to your room, pack your church dress and your warm coat. We're leaving. No. Sarah's voice could have etched glass. We're getting ready for visitors. After Thomas left with Morrison's body wrapped in canvas tarp, they worked without speaking. What to? Yeah. Luke cleaning every weapon they owned, the Spencer, the shotgun, even the old Navy Colt from Sarah's father. Sarah making ammunition with Emma, teaching her daughter's small fingers to measure powder, seat the ball, crimp the paper cartridge tight. Like this. Emma held up a finished cartridge, perfect as any soldier's. Perfect. Sarah set it in the growing pile. Now another, and another. The kitchen table became a war council. Luke spread out Morrison's blood-stained papers beside the railroad company's offer, McKenna's name from Hoffman's register that Sarah had torn out, and a map of the valley with X marks on the taken farms. Pattern's clear, Luke said, finger tracing the marks. He takes the water rights first, controls water, controls everything else. Sarah studied the map. The Hendricks place feeds the creek. The young sit on the underground spring. Morrison had the river access, so all water that feeds our land. We're the last piece he needs. Then we'd best make sure we're a piece that chokes him. Hoofbeats approached fast. Luke grabbed the Spencer. But it was Martha Sundown, her gray hair loose from its usual braid, flying behind her like smoke. She dismounted before the horse fully stopped. Sarah! Martha's voice carried the same tone she'd used when her husband died, controlled fury wrapped in prairie iron. Thomas told me. How much time? McKenna gave us 3 days, Sarah said. But Morrison said tonight for the burning. Then we work with tonight. Martha pulled a leather pouch from her saddlebag, worn smooth from years of handling. This was Joseph's, from before the army took everything. And she unwrapped a Colt Navy revolver, the metal worn but clean, oiled regular. The ivory grip yellowed with age but solid. I can't take... Luke started. You're not taking. I'm giving. To Sarah. Martha pressed the gun into Sarah's hands. Man threatens a child. He deals with the mother. That's older than law. Older than territories. Sarah's fingers closed around the grip. It fit her hand like God himself had measured it. I sent Thomas to the other families. Martha continued. The ones McKenna hasn't bought or burned out yet. They're coming. They don't even know us well, Luke protested. They know McKenna. Martha's dark eyes held years of similar fights. That's enough. Evil's evil, whether it wears a uniform or a business suit. Emma appeared with the old family Bible from the mantel, the one with births and deaths written in the front. Mama, should I hide this? No, sweet pea. Put it right here where we can see it. They worked through the afternoon. Sarah taught Emma the warning whistles too short. 1 long meant danger coming. 3 long meant get to the root cellar. 1 continuous note meant fire. Luke and Martha strung wire with tin cans and empty preserve jars across the approaches to the house. Anyone coming in the dark would announce themselves. "Your Joseph teach you this?" Luke asked. "My father, before the army moved us from our land in '64. Martha's hands never paused in their work. "McKenna's not the first to think he can take what he wants. Won't be the last, neither." The sun dropped lower, painting the mountains purple. Sarah noticed Luke's hands had gone perfectly still, not shaking, just motionless, like he was listening for something only he could hear. "What is it?" "Wind's died." Dim. He wet his finger, held it up. Nothing. "Was blowing east all day. Now nothing." "Makes fire unpredictable," Martha said. "Harder to control where it spreads." Sarah understood. Wind would let McKenna direct the fire away from the house. Without wind, fire might go anywhere. Might reach the house whether he meant it to or not. "He doesn't care," she said. "If we burn with it, makes his job easier." "Mama," Emma tugged Sarah's sleeve. "There's riders coming." Dust clouds rose from 3 directions, but instead of McKenna's men, it was the Hendersons from town, the minister and his wife in their buggy. Behind them, the Driscolls from the next valley, then the Chambers, the Wyatts, old Sam Pickens who'd lost his own farm last month. They came with rifles and grim faces. Minister Henderson carried his Bible in one hand, his old Sharps rifle in the other. "Heard you might have trouble," he said simply. "This isn't your fight," Luke said. "Hell, it isn't, pardon my language. Ladies?" Henderson cleared his throat. "Man comes after one family for their land. He comes after all of us. That's gospel truth, Old Testament and New." Mrs. Henderson had a basket of ammunition. "From Hoffman's store," she said quietly. "He said to tell you he's sorry he couldn't do more. But his brother in Denver, the one who knows about McKenna, he sent a telegraph to the federal marshal. Help's coming." "When?" "5 days, maybe less if the roads are clear." "Morrison said tonight?" Sarah said. "Then we make sure you see tomorrow morning." Sam Pickens spat tobacco juice with emphasis. "I got nothing left to lose anyway." Sarah counted faces. 12 adults, not counting Emma, against McKenna's 20 hired guns, maybe more. "It's not enough," Luke said quietly. "It's what we have." Sarah checked the Colt's cylinder, counted 6 shots. "We make it enough." The sun touched the western mountains, painting the sky the color of fresh blood. Emma stood at the window, practicing her whistle signals under her breath, little puffs of steam on the glass. "Riders," she announced. "Coming slow." A single horseman approached, white flour sack tied to his rifle barrel as a flag. "That's Ben Chambers," Luke said, recognizing his old unit mate by the way he sat his horse. "What's he doing with them?" Chambers stopped at the gate. "Luke Garrison McKenna sends terms." Luke stepped onto the porch, rifle visible but not raised. "Terms. Sign over the water rights tonight. You can stay on as tenant farmers, refuse, and..." Chambers' voice cracked like a boy's. "I'm sorry. Luke, he's got my boy. Took him from school in town. Says if I don't deliver this message, if I don't help tonight..." Sarah felt ice form in her chest. "How old's your boy?" 12. Same age as when you pulled me from that river at Chancellorsville." "Luke." Chambers' shoulders shook. "I'm so sorry." "Tell McKenna we'll think on it," Luke called back. "Give us an hour." Chambers wheeled his horse, rode away fast like the ground might open up and swallow him. Sarah turned to the gathered families. "Anyone wants to leave? Now's the time. No shame in it." Nobody moved, not even a shuffle. "Then we'd best get ready." She looked at Emma. "Sweet pea, you remember what I taught you?" Emma nodded, lifted the whistle to her lips. "Not yet. But soon." Sarah pulled her daughter close, kissed the top of her head. Her hair smelled like lye soap and sunshine in childhood that was ending too fast. "When it starts, you get to the cellar. No matter what you hear, you stay down there. What if you need help? Then we'll call for you, but not before." The last light faded. Darkness crept across the valley like spilled ink. Sarah stood with Luke at the window, watching, waiting. "Sarah," Luke started, "if something happens to me, then I'll finish it." "That's not what I..." She turned to face him. "Luke, there's something I need to tell you. Something important. But before she could speak, Emma's whistle pierced the darkness too short. One long. In the distance, torches flared to life. First one, then 5, then 20. They moved toward the ranch in a steady line. "He brought more men," someone whispered. Sarah counted the lights. 30 at least, maybe 40. Luke's hand found hers in the darkness. "We can still run? Take Emma and—" "No." Sarah's free hand moved to her belly where new life grew that Luke didn't know about yet. "We make our stand here." The torches stopped just outside rifle range. A voice carried across the darkness McKenna's cultured tones. "Luke Garrison, you have something that belongs to the railroad. We've come to collect—" Sarah raised the Colt, sighted through the window, but Emma was tugging at her dress, pointing not at the torches but at something else, movement in the darkness between the house and barn. "Mama," Emma breathed. "There's someone already inside our fence." Sarah's fingers pressed against Emma's lips, stopping the warning whistle mid-breath. The shadow between house and barn shifted, split into 3 shapes moving wrong too stiff, arms held strange at their sides. "It's the Chambers boy," Martha whispered, squinting through the darkness. "And 2 others. Children." They emerged into the moonlight. Ben Chambers' 12-year-old son William, the Hendricks girl Mary, and a boy Sarah didn't recognize, maybe 8 years old. They walked like marionettes, jerky and unnatural. "Something's wrong with them," Luke breathed. The children stopped 20 yards from the porch. Young William's voice carried clear in the still air, but the words came out flat, rehearsed. "Mr. Garrison, they said to tell you." His voice cracked, not from fear, but from rope burns on his throat. "They said you got 1 hour to sign the papers, or they burn the barn with us inside." Sarah's stomach dropped to her boots. The children's wrists were bound with rope, all 3 tethered together like cattle for market. "McKenna!" Luke roared into the darkness. "These are children. Have you no decency? Children grow into adults who remember their land was stolen." McKenna's voice drifted back, calm as Sunday prayer. "Unless they don't grow up at all?" Emma tugged Sarah's sleeve. "Mama, I know Mary. She's only 10. She can't even swim yet." Sarah's hand found the Colt's grip, finger tracing the trigger guard while she calculated distances. 20 yards to the children, 40 to the torch line, too far for accurate shooting in the dark. "Minister," she said quietly, "can you and your wife get to those children if we cover you?" Henderson was already moving, pulling his wife behind him. "Martha, you still got that skinning knife?" Martha produced a blade that caught the moonlight, sharp enough to slice paper. "Always." "Luke, can you hit those torches from here? Maybe half, they're spread wide on purpose." Sarah turned to Emma, knelt to her level. "Remember the bird calls I taught you last spring?" Emma nodded, eyes huge but steady. "When I squeeze your shoulder, you do the meadowlark, 3 times, loud as you can." "That's not one of our danger signals." "It is now." Sarah positioned Emma at the window. The glass was cold under her palm. "Ready." She called out, "McKenna, I'm coming out to talk." "Sarah, no." Luke grabbed her arm. She shrugged him off, stepped onto the porch. The Colt hung loose at her side, visible but not raised. The weight of it pulled her dress funny. "Mrs. Garrison." McKenna emerged from the torch line, that left foot dragging through the dirt. "Have you reconsidered?" "I want to see the papers." "Of course." He reached inside his coat, slow and deliberate. Sarah took 3 steps forward, putting herself between the tied children and McKenna's men. The boards creaked under her boots. "William, Mary, you children stay real still now. Everything's going to be fine." McKenna produced the deed transfer, holding it up so the torchlight caught it. "Simple signature. You can even stay on as tenants. Work your own land for wages." "Like the Morrisons stayed." Sarah let acid drip from every word. "Jake Morrison's blood is still warm on my cellar floor." McKenna's smile never wavered. "Tragic. Man shouldn't play with fire when he's been drinking." Sarah squeezed Emma's shoulder through the window. Emma's meadowlark call pierced the night perfect, clear, 3 times in succession. Thomas Sundown rose from the tall grass beside the children like a ghost, knife already cutting their bonds. The rope parted like butter. Martha and Mrs. Henderson rushed from the shadows, pulling the children toward the house while Luke's Spencer boomed. 3 torches spun through the air and died in the dirt. McKenna's hand went for his pistol. Sarah's Colt came up smooth, pressed against his throat before he could clear leather. The metal was cold against his skin. "Call them off," she hissed. McKenna chuckled, Adam's apple bobbing against the gun barrel. "Or what, you'll shoot me, a woman like you." Sarah pulled the hammer back. The click sounded loud as thunder. "A woman like me? You mean Rebecca's sister?" His smile finally faltered, just a twitch at the corner. "You fed her peppermints laced with laudanum, held her under in that trough until the bubbles stopped." Sarah's voice stayed flat as hammered iron. "She was 22 years old. She wanted to be a school teacher." "Prove it." "Don't need to." The Colt's barrel pressed harder, leaving a ring in his skin. "This isn't a court." Gunfire erupted behind them. McKenna's men charged the house from 3 sides, torches spinning through the air toward the barn. The Spencer boomed again. A torch fell short, starting a grass fire that spread quick in the dry growth. "Burn it!" McKenna shouted, even with Sarah's gun at his throat. "Burn it all. The house, too." Sarah saw the first torch hit the barn wall. The old wood, dry as kindling from the summer heat, caught immediately. Flames raced up the boards like they were climbing to heaven. The milk cow bellowed inside, terror in her voice. Emma broke from the house, running toward the barn. "Daisy's in there. She's tied up." "Emma, no!" Sarah's attention shifted for a heartbeat. McKenna twisted, knocked the Colt aside with his forearm. His fist caught Sarah's jaw, sent her sprawling in the dirt. The gun spun away into darkness. She tasted blood, felt dirt in her mouth. Emma reached the barn door, struggled with the heavy iron latch. Smoke poured through the gaps in the boards. Inside, Daisy's bellows turned to screams that didn't sound like any animal should sound. Thomas appeared beside Emma, added his strength to hers. The door scraped open. Black smoke billowed out, drove them back coughing and choking. Sarah rolled, searching for the Colt in the darkness. Her fingers found rocks, grass, everything but metal. McKenna's boot caught her ribs, flipped her onto her back. Stars exploded across her vision. He stood over her, his own pistol drawn and steady. "You should have taken the offer, could have lived comfortable." He aimed at her head. The hole in the barrel looked big as a tunnel. Luke's rifle cracked. McKenna's hat flew off, but he didn't flinch, didn't even glance away. "Your husband's a poor shot under pressure," McKenna observed, conversational. "Always was. In Georgia. He couldn't shoot a barn from inside it when things got hot." Emma emerged from the barn, leading Daisy by a rope halter. The cow's eyes rolled white with terror, her coat singed and smoking. But Emma kept pulling with all her 40 pounds. Thomas pushed from behind, his shirt on fire at the shoulder. The barn roof collapsed inward with a sound like the world ending, sending a column of sparks into the night sky that rose like prayers. The fire spread to the chicken coop, the tool shed, the outhouse. "Enough!" A new voice cracked like a whip across the chaos. Everyone turned. 4 riders approached from the east, badges glinting in the firelight. The lead rider, a woman Sarah had never seen before, held a federal marshal's star high. "Deputy Marshal Catherine Brennan," she announced. Her voice carried over the crackling flames. "Everyone drop your weapons, now!" McKenna's pistol stayed pointed at Sarah. "You're early, Marshal, and out of your jurisdiction. Federal land fraud is always my jurisdiction." Brennan dismounted smooth as water, hand on her sidearm. "Silas McKenna, you're under arrest for 18 counts of murder, conspiracy, and corruption of federal officials. You have no proof." Jake Morrison signed a confession before he died. "We have the senator's telegrams ordering the killings. We have everything." McKenna's finger tightened on the trigger. "Then I've got nothing to lose." Emma stepped between McKenna and her mother, just walked right up and stood there, covered in soot and ash, Daisy's lead rope still in her hand, Thomas's burnt shirt smoking beside her. "You killed our chickens," she said to McKenna, voice steady as bedrock. 6 of them. They had names." McKenna blinked, confused by the child's sudden presence, the gun wavering. "Penny, Biscuit, Rosie, Dot, Feathers, and Mrs. Cluck." Emma's voice never wavered. "I found them, every morning. Fed them cracked corn from my hand, gathered their eggs warm from the nest. They trusted me." "Move, child," McKenna ordered. but uncertainty crept into his voice. No. Sarah saw Luke approaching from behind, rifle raised, saw Martha moving through the shadows with her knife, saw Marshal Brennan's hand on her sidearm, waiting for a clear shot. But Emma just stood there, 9 years old and fearless, staring down a killer. You poison wells, burn barns, hurt children. Emma's chin lifted. But you can't make us leave. This is our home. These are our people. McKenna's gun hand started to shake, just a tremor, but Sarah saw it. So did Emma. You're scared, the girl said, wonder creeping into her voice. You're scared of us, of a little girl and her mama. McKenna's face twisted ugly. He swung the pistol toward Emma. 3 guns fired at once. Luke's rifle, Marshal Brennan's revolver, and Sarah's recovered Colt that she'd grabbed while Emma distracted him. The night exploded in muzzle flash. McKenna dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Blood pooled beneath him, black as oil in the firelight. Emma didn't even flinch. She turned to her mother, still holding Daisy's rope. Did I do it right, the distraction? Sarah pulled her daughter close, breathing in smoke and childhood and impossible courage. Perfect, sweet pea, perfect. Marshal Brennan approached, holstering her weapon. Mrs. Garrison, we need to talk about a scream cut through the night, not human horse. Sarah spun to see the barn's remaining wall falling outward, tons of burning timber heading straight for where Thomas stood helping other children to safety. Luke ran toward them, but he was too far. The wall fell in slow motion, fire and fury and death. Martha's cry joined the horse's scream, Thomas! The ground shook as the wall hit earth, sending sparks flying like fireflies. But Thomas had rolled sideways at the last second, pulling the Henderson girl with him. They lay gasping in the dirt, inches from the burning timber. Thank God, Martha breathed, running to her son. But Sarah noticed something else. Where Thomas had been standing, where the wall now lay burning, she could see papers scattered in the ashes, papers that had been hidden in the barn wall, and on one paper, visible in the firelight, her sister Rebecca's handwriting, clear as day, unmistakable, a marriage certificate, Rebecca's name next to McKenna's, and below it, in Rebecca's hand, Emma McKenna, born of this union. Sarah's knees hit the dirt beside the burning timber. The marriage certificate curled at the edges, Rebecca's signature turning black. She grabbed it, heat searing her palm, pulled it clear before fire could claim it whole. Luke stood behind her, reading over her shoulder. His breathing stopped, started again rough. Sarah, not here. She folded the paper, tucked it inside her bodice where it pressed hot against her ribs. Not now. Marshal Brennan approached, her boots crunching on glass from the barn windows. Mrs. Garrison, I need statements from everyone. Tonight, while it's fresh. The children need tending first. Sarah stood, legs shaky but holding. And the wounded. Thomas had burns across his back, the skin already blistering where his shirt had caught. Mrs. Henderson worked on him with lard from her basket, her hands gentle but sure. The boy never made a sound, though his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. Church, Minister Henderson announced, his voice carrying over the chaos. Everyone to the church. We'll sort this out there. McKenna's men, those still breathing, sat in the dirt with their hands tied, watched by Sam Pickens and his scattergun. Some nursed wounds. Others stared at McKenna's body like they couldn't quite believe the devil could die. Load him up, Brennan ordered her deputies. They rolled McKenna onto a blanket, carried him to their wagon. His left boot dragged in the dirt one last time. The trek to church took 20 minutes on foot. Sarah walked with Emma's hand in hers, the child's fingers cold despite the heat from the fires behind them. Luke carried William Chambers, the boy's legs too shaky to hold him. Martha supported her son, singing something low, in Cheyenne that sounded like prayer. The church doors stood open, lamplight spilling out golden. Someone had already started coffee on the potbelly stove. The smell mixed strange with the smoke in everyone's clothes. Set the wounded here, Mrs. Henderson directed, clearing the front pews. Children in the back with blankets. Sarah settled Emma on a bench, checked her for burns, found singed hair, scraped knees, but nothing serious, nothing that wouldn't heal. Mama, Emma whispered, that paper you grabbed, was that about Aunt Rebecca? Sarah's chest tightened. We'll talk about it later, sweet pea. Was she my real mama? The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah felt Luke watching from across the room, felt the weight of truth pressing down. You're our daughter, Sarah said carefully. That's what matters. Emma studied her with those green eyes, Rebecca's eyes, now that Sarah couldn't deny it anymore. But the paper said, Tito, papers lie sometimes. Luke appeared beside them, knelt to Emma's level. People are what's true. Family is what's true. Marshal Brennan cleared her throat from the pulpit. I need to know exactly what happened, from the beginning. Sarah stood, the hidden certificate scratching against her ribs. McKenna came for our water rights. When we wouldn't sell, he tried to force us. That's not the beginning, Brennan said. Morrison mentioned your sister, Rebecca Thornton. The church went quiet. Even the coffee stopped percolating, like it knew to hush. Rebecca died 8 years ago, Sarah said. In Abilene, the sheriff ruled it accidental drowning. But you don't believe that. I know it wasn't. And Sarah's voice stayed steady, but her hands clenched in her skirts. McKenna was courting her. She tried to break it off. 2 weeks later, she was dead. Any proof? Sarah thought of the certificate burning her ribs, of Emma sitting right there with Rebecca's face and McKenna's stubborn chin, of the truth that would destroy everything they'd built. Just knowing Rebecca, she was afraid of water, and she'd never take laudanum, which they found in her blood. Brennan wrote in her notebook. McKenna said something about the child, that she looked like Rebecca. People say Emma favors my side of the family, Sarah said, the half-truth bitter on her tongue. A commotion at the door. 3 riders burst in, faces flushed and urgent. Marshal, the lead rider. A boy Sarah recognized from town, gasped for breath. There's been another killing. At the hotel, Brennan stood sharp. Who? Mrs. Hoffman, the store owner's wife. The boy swallowed hard. Found her in her room, shot in the head. And Marshal, there's a note. Says it's just the beginning. Sarah's blood turned ice. Mrs. Hoffman had been at the ranch earlier, had seen the marriage certificate in the barn before it burned, had seen Emma's true parentage written plain. When Brennan demanded. Maybe an hour ago, while everyone was at the Garrison place. Luke stepped forward. McKenna's dead. Who would... McKenna's got a brother. The boy interrupted. Folks saw him at the hotel. Josiah McKenna looks just like Silas, except he walks straight. Sarah's hand found Emma's shoulder, gripped tight. Another McKenna, another threat. He left something else, the boy continued, pulling out a telegram. This came for you, Mr. Garrison. Luke read it, his face going gray as ash. He handed it to Sarah with shaking fingers. The telegram was brief. Water rights were never the goal. The child is... She's blood of my blood. J. McKenna. Sarah looked at Emma, who was reading the telegram over her elbow. The child's face had gone still as pond water. He wants me, Emma asked, voice small. Why does he want me? Before Sarah could answer, before she could think of any lie that would protect her daughter from the truth, another voice spoke from the doorway. Because you're the only heir to the McKenna fortune. Everyone turned. A woman stood there, dressed in black traveling clothes, face hidden by a dark veil. She lifted it, revealing features Sarah hadn't seen in 8 years, features she'd thought were buried in Abilene, features exactly like Emma's. Hello, sister, Rebecca said. I believe we need to talk about my daughter. Sarah's legs gave out. Luke caught her before she hit the floor, his arms solid around her waist. The church spun, lamplight smearing into streaks. Rebecca stood in the doorway, real as morning, wearing black wool despite the summer heat. You're dead, Sarah's voice came out cracked. I saw your body. We buried you. Rebecca stepped into the church. Her boots clicked on the wooden floor. Each step measured. You buried someone, Mrs. Pritchard's niece, actually. Poor girl died of consumption the same week. We were similar enough in size. Emma stood frozen between them, green eyes moving from Rebecca to Sarah and back. Mama. Both women turned to her. The word hung in the air like a question nobody wanted to answer. Sweet pea. Sarah started. Don't call her that. Rebecca's voice cut sharp. She's not yours to name. Luke stepped forward, rifle still in his hands from the fight. You left her 8 years, not a word. You don't get to walk in here and I left her to save her life. Rebecca pulled off her gloves, finger by finger. Silas would have killed her, or worse, raised her to be like him. Marshal Brennan had her hand on her sidearm. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to explain yourself. Slowly. Rebecca laughed, bitter as burnt coffee. Where do I start with Silas drugging me with the marriage he forced while I was too sick to refuse, or with the months locked in his house in Denver while my belly grew? Sarah found her voice. The letter. You wrote you were working as a governess in Denver. I wrote what he told me to write. Rebecca moved closer, and Sarah smelled lavender water and travel dust. Every word watched, every letter read before sending. But you escaped. You came to Abilene. For 2 weeks. Long enough to leave Emma somewhere safe. Rebecca's eyes fixed on her daughter. I knew he'd follow, so I disappeared. Let everyone think I died. Emma backed against the pew. You left me. I saved you. You left me. Emma's voice cracked high. Mama and Papa raised me. They wanted me. Rebecca's composure cracked. You think I didn't want you every day for 8 years, wondering if you were healthy, if you were happy, if you remembered? Remembered what? Emma's hands clenched into fists. I was a baby. You were 3 months old enough to know your mother's voice. Sarah stood, legs steady now. She knows her mother's voice. She's heard it every day for 8 years. Rebecca's face went hard. Playing house with my child doesn't make her yours. Raising her does. Sitting through fever nights does. Teaching her to read, to ride, to be brave that makes her ours. The law says different. Rebecca pulled a document from her bag. Marriage certificate, birth record, all legal. She's Emma McKenna, heir to everything Silas built. Built on blood, Luke said. You want her to inherit that? I want her to inherit millions. The railroad shares alone are worth Stop. Emma's voice cut through the argument. Everyone turned to look at her. This 9-year-old girl standing straight as a fence post. I don't care about money, Rebecca softened. You're too young to understand it. I understand plenty. Emma moved to stand between Luke and Sarah. I understand you left. They stayed. You hid. They fought. You're a stranger. They're my parents. Rebecca's face crumpled. For a moment, she looked exactly like Emma when she was trying not to cry. I'm your mother. No. Emma's voice stayed steady. You're the woman who gave birth to me. There's a difference. The church door slammed open. Wind howled through, bringing smoke and something else, the sound of horses, many horses. Thomas Sundown appeared, Burns wrapped in white cloth, his face tight with pain. Riders coming, maybe 20, armed. Marshal Brennan moved to the window. Can't see faces in the dark, but they're carrying torches. Josiah, Rebecca breathed. He found me. Who's Josiah? Sarah demanded. Silas's twin brother. The one who really runs everything. Rebecca's face went pale. Silas was cruel but simple. Josiah is smart and patient. He's been waiting 8 years for this. Luke checked his rifle. Waiting for what? For Emma to be old enough to sign documents, to transfer the estate. Rebecca grabbed Emma's shoulders. He needs her alive, but only barely. Once she signs, she's worthless to him. The hoofbeats stopped outside. A voice called through the door, cultured, pleasant, nothing like Silas's rough bark. Rebecca, dear, I know you're in there, and I believe you have something of mine. Rebecca pushed Emma behind her. She's not yours, Josiah. Oh, but she is. Dear brother Silas is dead, thank you for that, by the way. Mrs. Garrison saves me the trouble. That makes me Emma's guardian, legal and binding. Marshal Brennan called out, This is federal property. You're trespassing. Josiah laughed. Marshal Brennan, how nice. I have a telegram here from Judge Carlton. You're relieved of duty pending investigation into Silas's death. Seems you exceeded your authority. That's not possible. Judge Carlton is Senator Clayton's brother-in-law, and Senator Clayton is my business partner. Papers slid under the door. All legal. You can read them if you like. Brennan grabbed the papers, read fast. Her face went white. This can't be legal. Everything I do is legal. That's the difference between Silas and me. Josiah's voice stayed pleasant. Now, Rebecca, bring Emma out. We have documents to sign. No. I have 30 men out here. The church is wood, old wood, dry wood. A pause. How long do you think it will burn? Sarah smelled smoke, fresh smoke, not from the barn fire. They were already lighting torches against the walls. You'd burn a church. Minister Henderson stood, Bible clutched to his chest. With children inside. I'd burn heaven itself if it stood between me and what's mine. Josiah's voice never changed tone. You have 1 minute. Rebecca looked around the church, at the families huddled in pews, at the wounded Thomas, the other children, at Emma. If I bring her out, you let the others go. Rebecca, no! Sarah grabbed her sister's arm. We can fight, with what 12 guns against 30 while the church burns around us. Rebecca shook her off. I won't have their deaths on my conscience. She walked toward the door. Emma broke free from Luke, ran after her. Wait! Emma grabbed Rebecca's skirt. I'll go, but only if everyone else goes free first. Emma, no! Sarah started forward. It's logic. Mama. Emma's voice stayed steady, but Sarah saw her hands shaking when... 1 life for 20. That's fair trade. Rebecca stared at her daughter. You're 9 years old. Old enough to sign papers. Apparently. Emma walked to the door. Mr. McKenna, I'll come. But the others leave first. All of them. Silence outside. Then, agreed. Everyone out, except Rebecca. She stays. Why? Emma asked. Because someone needs to witness the signature. And I'd like her to see what becomes of children who don't cooperate. The church doors opened. Josiah McKenna stood there. And Sarah's breath caught. He looked exactly like Silas, same pale eyes, same sharp features. But he stood straight, no dragging foot. And his smile was worse somehow, calculated instead of cruel. Hello, Emma. He tipped his hat. I'm your Uncle Josiah. Emma didn't move. You're nothing to me. His smile widened. We'll see. The families filed out. Luke and Sarah last. Sarah stopped beside Emma, pulled her close, whispered in her ear. Remember what I taught you about foxes? Emma nodded. The smallest movement, Josiah noticed. No conspiracies. Please. Makes things messy. He produced a document from his coat. Simple transfer of guardianship. Sign here, Emma. I can't write my full name yet, Emma lied smoothly. Only my first. That's fine. He held out a pen. Emma took it. The pen shook in her small hand. She bent to sign. The church bell began to toll. Once, twice, 3 times. Josiah looked up, annoyed. Who's ringing that? The bell kept tolling. 4, 5, 6. It's midnight, Minister Henderson said. The bell rings 12 times at midnight. 7, 8, 9. Emma used the distraction. Instead of signing, she drove the pen deep into Josiah's hand. He screamed, jerked back. The document fell, landing in a puddle of lamp oil leaking from a broken lantern. 10, 11. Rebecca grabbed a candle from the altar, touched it to the oil. The document burst into flames. 12. Josiah pulled the pen from his hand, blood running down his wrist. You little... His words cut off. Emma had grabbed his pistol from its holster while he was distracted by pain. The gun was too big for her hands, but she held it steady, pointed at his chest. My name, she said clearly, is Emma Garrison, and you're trespassing in our church. The pistol shook in Emma's small hands. Her finger found the trigger, but the weight of it heavier than she'd expected made her arms tremble. Josiah McKenna stood perfectly still, blood dripping from his punctured hand onto the church floor. You won't shoot. His voice stayed calm, like discussing weather. You're a child. I'm McKenna Blood. Remember, Emma's arms ached from holding the gun steady. You just said so yourself. Rebecca moved toward her daughter, slow, hands visible. "Emma, give me the gun." "No." Emma stepped back, keeping the pistol trained on Josiah. "He'll hurt people. He already hurt Mrs. Hoffman." Josiah's eyebrows rose. "Clever girl. Yes, I killed the shopkeeper's wife. She knew too much about your mother's supposed death." He flexed his wounded hand, blood running faster. "But that gun holds 6 shots. I have 30 men outside." The church door opened. Luke stepped through, Spencer rifle aimed at Josiah's head. Behind him, Sarah appeared with the Colt, then Martha with her husband's revolver, Sam Pickens with his scattergun. One by one, the Valley families filed back in, all armed. "Funny thing about your men," Luke said. "They were hired with McKenna money. But Silas is dead. You haven't paid them yet." Josiah's smile faltered. "They work for me now." "Do they?" Marshal Brennan entered, her badge glinting. "Because I just offered them amnesty for testifying against you. Full pardons in exchange for evidence about the murders." Sarah watched Josiah's face change, confidence cracking like dried mud. Outside, she heard horses leaving his hired guns abandoning him. "You can't prove anything," Josiah said. "Mrs. Hoffman wrote it all down," Rebecca said quietly. "Every detail about helping fake my death. How you and Silas planned it together? How you've been hunting Emma ever since?" She pulled a leather journal from her coat. "She gave this to me an hour before you killed her." That was a lie Sarah could tell from the way Rebecca's eyes shifted, but Josiah didn't know that. "Even if that's true," he said, voice harder now, "I'm still her legal guardian. The marriage was real. The birth was recorded. The marriage was forced." Rebecca stepped closer to Emma. "I was drugged. Couldn't consent." "Prove it." Rebecca unbuttoned her left sleeve, rolled it up. Scars ran from wrist to elbow, old but deep. "I tried to kill myself rather than stay married to your brother. Dr. Carpenter in Denver treated me. He has records." Emma's gun hand dropped slightly, staring at the scars. "You hurt yourself. To get away. To get to you." Rebecca's voice cracked. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Josiah lunged forward, reaching for Emma's gun. Luke's rifle butt caught him in the temple, dropped him to his knees. Blood ran from a gash above his eye. "Federal Marshal!" The shout came from outside. Everyone turned. A new group of riders approached, badges glinting in the torchlight. Real federal marshals, not Brennan's local deputies. The lead marshal dismounted, walked into the church. He was older, grizzled, with eyes that had seen everything twice. "Marshal Davidson, from Denver. We're investigating the murder of Senator Clayton." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Senator Clayton, shot dead in his office 3 days ago." Davidson looked around the church, taking in the weapons, the blood, the child holding a pistol. "Anyone here know anything about that?" Josiah laughed from the floor, blood running into his eye. "I do. Luke Garrison was in Denver 3 days ago. Has a history with the senator from the war." "That's a lie," Sarah said. "Luke was here." "Can you prove it?" Davidson asked. Sarah's mind raced. 3 days ago, Luke had ridden to the county seat for supplies, gone all day. No witnesses except... "I can prove it." Thomas Sundown stepped forward, Burns still wrapped but standing straight. "Mr. Garrison helped us birth a calf 3 days ago, breech birth. Took all morning." "Boys lying," Josiah said. "Indians always lie for whites who pay them." Martha slapped him hard enough to snap his head sideways. "My son doesn't lie. And we're not Indians. We're Cheyenne." Davidson studied Thomas. "You're sure about the date?" "Yes, sir. 3 days ago was my father's death day. 2 years since he died. We birthed the calf at dawn, then visited his grave." Thomas pulled something from his pocket, a carved wooden horse, worn smooth. "Left this for him. Mr. Garrison helped me make it the night before." Davidson examined the carving, the fresh cuts in old wood. "Anyone else witness this?" "I did." Minister Henderson stepped forward. "I said prayers at the grave. Luke was there." "And I was there," his wife added. "Made breakfast for everyone after." One by one, the Valley families confirmed it. They'd all seen Luke that day. All could swear to it. Davidson nodded slowly. "Then who killed Senator Clayton?" "I know who." The voice came from the back of the church. A man stepped from the shadows, thin, well-dressed, holding a briefcase. Sarah recognized him as Clayton's personal secretary. "Mr. Winters?" Davidson frowned. "What are you doing here?" Winters opened his briefcase, pulled out papers. Following the money, Senator Clayton was stealing from the railroad fund. Josiah McKenna found out. Threatened to expose him unless he got a bigger cut. "That's absurd," Josiah started. "I have the telegrams." Winters spread papers on a pew. "Your orders to have Clayton killed. Your promise to pay Morrison for the job." "Morrison's dead," Josiah said quickly. "Can't testify." "But his wife can." A woman entered the church, dressed in widow's black. Sarah recognized her Jake Morrison's wife, supposed to be in Ohio. "Jake wrote me everything. Posted it the day he died." She pulled out a thick envelope. "His confession. How you hired him. How he shot Clayton on your orders. How he couldn't live with it." Her voice stayed steady, but tears ran down her face. "He died trying to make it right." Josiah struggled to his feet, swayed. "None of this matters. The girl is still mine by law." "Actually," Marshal Davidson said, examining the papers, "she's not." "See, twins can't both be legal guardians, quote. Only the eldest has claim to both. And according to birth records." He looked up. Silas was older by 6 minutes. So Silas is dead. His wife Rebecca is alive. That makes her Emma's guardian, not you. Rebecca stepped forward. "And I formally grant guardianship to Sarah and Luke Garrison, my daughter's true parents." She pulled out a document, already prepared, already signed. "Witnessed by Minister Henderson and his wife yesterday evening." Sarah stared at her sister. "You had this ready." "I've had 8 years to think about it." Rebecca knelt before Emma, who still held the gun. "May I?" She gently took the pistol, set it aside. "You're braver than I ever was." Emma studied her birth mother's face. "Are you staying?" Rebecca looked at Sarah. At Luke. At the life they'd built. "No, baby. This isn't my home. It's yours." "But where will you go?" "California. I have a teaching position waiting." Rebecca touched Emma's face gently. "But I'll write, if that's okay." Emma nodded, then threw her arms around Rebecca's neck. They held each other while the church stayed silent. Everyone watching this moment, 8 years in the making. Marshal Davidson cleared his throat. "Josiah McKenna, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, but fraud, attempted kidnapping." Josiah moved fast for a wounded man. He grabbed the dropped pistol, raised it not at Davidson but at Emma. "If I can't have her, no one." The Spencer rifle boomed. Josiah spun, clutched his shoulder, dropped the gun. Luke worked the lever, chambered another round. "The next one goes through your head," Luke said quietly. Josiah fell to his knees, blood running from hand and shoulder now. "You don't understand. Without the McKenna money, the railroad stops. The territory doesn't develop, towns die." "Then they die honest," Sarah said. "Better than living on blood money." Davidson's men hauled Josiah to his feet, cuffed him rough. As they dragged him out, he called back, "This isn't over, but I have lawyers, judges. I'll be out in a year." "Maybe," Rebecca said. "But Emma will be in California with me by then, under a different name. You'll never find her." Sarah's chest tightened. "What?" Rebecca turned to her. "It's the only way she'll be safe. You know that." Sarah looked at Emma, at Luke, at the life they'd built from nothing but love and stubbornness. The thought of losing Emma now, after everything. "No." Emma's voice rang clear. "I'm not leaving." "Sweetheart," Rebecca started. "I'm not your sweetheart. I'm not your baby. I'm Emma Garrison." She stood between Luke and Sarah, grabbed their hands. "This is my family, this is my home. If Mr. McKenna comes back, we'll face him together." "Emma," Rebecca's voice broke, "he'll never stop hunting you. The money, then we give it away." Emma looked at the Valley families gathered in the church. All of it, split between everyone he hurt. Davidson raised his eyebrows. That's millions of dollars. Young lady, I don't care. I don't want it. Emma squeezed Sarah's hand harder. I already have everything I need. Rebecca stood slowly. You're sure? I'm sure. Rebecca nodded, wiped her eyes. Then I'll set up the trust. Make sure the money goes where Emma wants. She looked at Sarah. Take care of her. I always have. The sisters embraced, careful and awkward after 8 years, when they pulled apart. Rebecca walked to the door, stopped. Emma, that teaching position in California, it's still open in a few years, if you ever want to learn. Emma smiled, the first real smile since Rebecca appeared. Maybe, when I'm older. Rebecca left then, walking into the night. The church stayed quiet, everyone processing what they'd witnessed. Then Mrs. Henderson said, Well, I think we all need coffee and something stronger for those that partake. People moved, talked. The spell breaking. Sarah knelt before Emma, checking her for injuries, for shock, for anything that needed tending. Mama, Emma said quietly. There's something else. Sarah's hand stilled. What? Emma reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded paper. When I grabbed his gun, I took this too, from his coat. Sarah unfolded it, a list of names, every family in the valley, but at the top, circled in red. Sarah Garrison, pregnant, due winter. Sarah's blood went cold. They knew, somehow. They'd known. Luke read over her shoulder, his hand finding Sarah's belly protective. At the bottom of the page, in Josiah's handwriting, 2 heirs are better than 1. Sarah's hand pressed against her belly, the paper crumpling in her other fist. Around them, families gathered their children, voices low and urgent. The coffee Mrs. Henderson promised sat forgotten on the stove. How? Luke's voice came rough. How could he know? Sarah thought back. The morning sickness she'd hidden, the way she'd turned from certain foods, the careful way she'd been moving, protecting something that barely existed yet. Mrs. Hoffman, she breathed. At the store, she asked if I was feeling well, said I had the look. And Josiah killed her right after, Luke said. Marshal Davidson approached, notebook out. Mrs. Garrison, this paper suggests further conspiracy. I'll need... A shot rang out from the street, then another. Screaming started. Luke grabbed his rifle, rushed to the window. It's Josiah! He's loose! Through the glass, Sarah saw one deputy down in the dirt, holding his leg. The other struggled with Josiah in the street, both men fighting for a gun. Josiah, despite his wounds, fought like a man possessed. Everyone down, Davidson shouted. The families dropped to the floor. Emma pressed against Sarah, her small body trembling. But Sarah kept watching through the window. Josiah broke free, pistol in his good hand. He turned toward the church, raised the gun. Sarah saw his mouth moving, saying something she couldn't hear. Then his chest bloomed red, once, twice, 3 times. He dropped to his knees, confusion on his face. Behind him, Rebecca stood with a smoking revolver, her traveling dress mud-stained from hiding in the shadows. For Emma, Rebecca said, loud enough to carry, and for myself. Josiah fell forward into the dirt. His body twitched once, went still. Rebecca dropped the gun, walked to the church. Her hands shook, but her head stayed high. She entered through the doors Marshal Davidson held open. I killed him, she said simply. Arrest me if you need to. Davidson studied her, then looked at his wounded deputy in the street. I saw a man resisting arrest, grabbed a weapon, had to be stopped. He looked around the church. Anyone see different? Silence. Every head shook no. Then it settled. Davidson closed his notebook. Self-defense. Rebecca nodded, turned to leave again. Sarah caught her arm. Stay. At least tonight. Sarah, your family. Complicated, messy family. But family. Sarah squeezed her sister's hand. Emma needs to know you. Properly. And this new baby. She touched her belly. They'll need their aunt. Rebecca's eyes filled. You mean that I married Luke, knowing he had ghosts from the war? We all carry our dead. Sarah pulled her sister close. But we don't have to carry them alone. They stood there, two sisters who'd lost 8 years. While the church filled with activity around them, the wounded deputy was brought in, leg bleeding but not fatal. Doc Carpenter arrived with his bag, started working. Emma tugged Sarah's skirt. Mama, is it over? Sarah knelt to her level. The McKennas are gone, sweet pea, both of them. But the paper said 2 heirs, the baby. Luke joined them, hand on Emma's shoulder. Nobody else knows about the baby. And nobody needs to. We'll leave, Sarah said. Go somewhere new, California, maybe, near Rebecca. No, Emma's voice came firm. This is our home. These are our people. We stayed and fought for a reason. Emma, if we run now, they win. Even dead, they win. Emma looked around the church at their neighbors. Besides, who's going to hurt us here? Everyone in this valley owes us. We saved their children. She was right. Sarah saw it in the faces around them. The Hendersons, the Chambers, the Driscolls. Every family that had stood with them tonight. Martha Sundown approached, her son Thomas beside her despite his burns. The girl speaks truth. This valley protects its own now. Anyone comes asking about McKenna heirs, they'll find nothing but closed doors and shut mouths. Exactly, Minister Henderson added. And if anyone needs papers adjusted births, deaths, dates well, church records can be amended when there's been error. Sarah understood. They were offering to erase Emma from the official record, make her fully, legally, only a Garrison. The McKenna fortune, Davidson started, goes to creditors and victims, Rebecca said firmly. I'll see to it. Every family Silas and Josiah hurt gets compensation. The rest goes to building schools, hospitals, things that help instead of hurt. That's millions walking away from your daughter, Davidson pointed out. My daughter has everything she needs. Rebecca looked at Emma standing between Sarah and Luke. Parents who love her, a home, a future not built on blood. Davidson shrugged, closed his notebook for good. Then my work here is done. The McKenna case is closed. Both brothers dead, estate and probate. He tipped his hat. Good evening, folks. He left with his deputies, taking Josiah's body. The church began to empty, families heading home to salvage what they could from the night's fires. Sarah's family, her real family. Luke and Emma and Rebecca stood together in the empty church. The lamp flames flickered, making shadows dance on the walls. Where will you stay tonight? Sarah asked Rebecca. The hotel, I suppose. Our house. The spare room's small but clean. Sarah managed a smile. Emma can show you the morning chores. If you're staying a while, I'd like that. Rebecca knelt before Emma. If it's okay with you, Emma studied this woman who'd given birth to her, left her, saved her. You can stay. But Sarah's my mama. Luke's my papa. That won't change. I don't want it to change. Rebecca touched Emma's cheek gently. I just want to know you. Learn who you've become. They walked home together through the smoky night. The barn was gone. Just foundation stones and memories. The house stood untouched, lamplight still glowing in the kitchen window where Sarah had left it burning. Inside. Sarah made coffee while Luke checked the windows. The doors, habits from the war that tonight's violence had awakened. Rebecca helped Emma wash the soot from her face and hands. There, Rebecca said, drying Emma's face with a soft towel. Now I can see you proper. They did look alike, same green eyes, same stubborn chin, but Emma had Luke's steady gaze, Sarah's careful hands. She was all of them and none of them. Her own person, entirely. A knock at the door made everyone freeze. Luke grabbed his rifle. Who's there? Tom Morrison, Jake's boy. Sarah opened the door. A young man stood there, maybe 17, looking like Jake before the war broke him. Mrs. Garrison, I'm sorry to bother you, but I found something in my pa's things. He held out a leather journal, worn and water-stained. Pa wrote everything down. Every job the McKennas hired him for. Every family they destroyed. Names, dates, places. He swallowed hard. There's more McKennas, cousins. They're coming. Sarah's coffee cup slipped from numb fingers, shattered on the floor. Tom opened the journal, pointed to an entry dated last month, Josiah's cousin Marcus in Texas, Silas's cousin Paul in Missouri, both informed about Emma, both claiming guardian rights if brothers die. Luke's rifle came up reflexively. How many? According to Pa's notes, 4 cousins, all male, all with legal claims. Tom's voice dropped. And all already on their way. Pa sent them telegrams 2 weeks ago on Josiah's orders, insurance. He called it. Sarah looked at Emma, at her belly where new life grew, at Rebecca who'd just found them again. When, she asked, though she didn't want the answer. Tom checked the journal. According to Pa's timeline, the first one arrives tomorrow. Outside, a wolf howled in the darkness. Then another. A pack, gathering. Sarah swept the broken coffee cup into her palm, ceramic edges biting skin. The shards caught lamplight like tiny mirrors, each reflecting Emma's frightened face. Tomorrow's Sunday, Luke said, working the rifle's lever though it was already chambered. They'll expect to find us at church. Then we won't be there. Sarah dumped the shards in the waste bucket, the crash too loud in the quiet kitchen. Tom, these cousins, what else does the journal say? Tom Morrison flipped pages, his father's cramped writing covering every line. Marcus McKenna runs cattle in Amarillo. Mean as a rattlesnake, but legal smart. Paul McKenna owns riverboats on the Missouri. The other 2 are Benjamin from Chicago, he's a lawyer, and Samuel from Kansas City, banker. Businessmen, Rebecca said. Not gunmen like Silas. Worse, Tom corrected. According to Pa, they use paper to kill. Foreclosures. Lawsuits. Legal theft. Emma stood by the window, breath fogging the glass. Riders coming? Everyone tensed. Luke moved to look, then relaxed slightly. It's Martha, and looks like the Hendersons. The Chambers, too. The yard filled with neighbors, all armed, all grim-faced. They gathered on the porch like they were waiting for something. Sarah opened the door. What's happening? Martha spoke first. Telegraph office just got word. 4 men got off the train in Cheyenne, hired a wagon and driver. They'll be here by dawn. You need to leave, Minister Henderson said. Tonight. Take Emma and go. Running makes us look guilty, Luke said. Staying makes you dead. Sam Pickens spat tobacco juice off the porch. These McKenna boys got deep pockets. They'll buy the law, same as their cousins did. Sarah felt the weight of eyes on her neighbors who'd risked everything for them, now telling them to run. Her hand found her belly, that secret still hidden beneath her apron. No, Emma's voice cut through the murmur of voices. We're not leaving. Child, you don't understand, Henderson started. I understand plenty. Emma moved to stand in the doorway, small body blocking the entrance. They want me because I'm McKenna blood. Because I can sign papers. But what if I can't? What do you mean? Rebecca asked. Emma looked at Minister Henderson. You said church records can be amended. What if there was never an Emma McKenna? What if I was always Emma Garrison? Born to Sarah and Luke. No McKenna blood at all. The cousins have documents, Tom said. Proof you exist. Documents burn. Emma's green eyes, Rebecca's eyes, stayed steady. Seems like fires happen a lot around here. Tragic accidents. Sarah understood first. You want to destroy every record of Emma McKenna. Tonight, before they arrive. Emma looked at the gathered families. The church records, the county files, everything Tom's father wrote. Make it all ash. That's destroying evidence, Marshall Brennan said from the back of the crowd. Evidence of what Emma asked. I'm Emma Garrison, always have been. Ask anyone here. One by one, the neighbors nodded. The Hendersons first, then the Chambers, the Driscolls, even Tom Morrison. Emma Garrison, they said, like a prayer or promise. That's the only Emma we know. Luke set down his rifle. The county office is locked on Sundays. I've got keys. Sam Pickens pulled a ring from his pocket. Night watchman owes me 3 months' wages. Gave me these instead. The church records, Henderson started. Are yours to manage? His wife finished. A terrible fire in the record room, such a shame. All those births and deaths from the last decade. Gone. Sarah watched their neighbors plan the erasure of Emma McKenna, the salvation of Emma Garrison. But something nagged at her, cold as winter wind. They'll know, she said. The cousins. They have their own copies. Let them. Rebecca stood, pulled out her traveling case. I have something better. She produced a daguerreotype, old and faded. 2 infant girls, identical as 2 peas. Twins, Rebecca said. Me and our sister Ruth. She died at 3 months. Fever. She held the image to the light. But in this picture, we're both Emma's age, both with the same face. Sarah's breath caught. You're saying... I'm saying Emma McKenna died of fever as an infant. Tragic. But Sarah Garrison adopted a foundling girl that same year. Named her Emma, after the poor, dead McKenna child. Rebecca smiled sharp as glass. Who's to say different? The only people who knew the truth are dead. Except you, Tom Morrison pointed out. I'm Rebecca Thornton. I've been teaching in California for 8 years. Check the employment records. She pulled out papers. Hired in 1874, never left. But you just got here. Did I? Rebecca looked around the room. Did anyone here see Rebecca Thornton arrive, or did you see a grieving woman in black? Could have been anyone. The silence stretched. Then Martha spoke. Come to think of it, that woman in black never said her name. Looked like a widow from Denver to me, Henderson added. Passing through. Terrible upset about something. Already left town, his wife confirmed. Took the evening stage. Sarah felt the lie building, solid as stone walls. Every person adding a brick, making it real? The daguerreotype, she said. If they test it. It's from 1856. Rebecca handed it to Sarah. See the photographer's mark, Ruth died in 1857. The dates work. Emma took the picture, studied the 2 babies. Which one's supposed to be me? The dead one, Rebecca said gently. Emma McKenna died before her first birthday. You're Emma Garrison, found on a church doorstep. An orphan. Chosen, Sarah corrected, pulling Emma close. We chose you. That's stronger than blood. Tom Morrison stood. I'll burn Pa's journal. Tonight. Everything he wrote about the McKennas. No. Luke picked up the journal, flipped through it. We burn the pages about Emma. Keep the rest. Evidence of their other crimes. They worked through the night. Henderson and his wife at the church, feeding pages into the potbelly stove. Sam Pickens at the county office. Files, disappearing into ash. Tom and Luke editing the journal, careful as surgeons. Sarah and Rebecca stayed with Emma, creating new truth from old lies. Your birthday, Sarah said. When should it be? When you found me, Emma said. Make that my birthday. March 15th. Then, day you came to us. Sarah wrote it in the family Bible, ink still wet. Emma Garrison, beloved daughter, born March 15th, 1874. Rebecca added her own note. Emma McKenna, infant daughter of Silas and Rebecca McKenna, died August 3rd, 1874. Fever. Dawn came gray through smoke. The valley smelled like burning paper, like endings and beginnings mixed together. A wagon appeared on the road, 4 men in black suits despite the heat. They sat rigid as fence posts, watching the burned barn, the weary families, the smoke still rising from the church. The wagon stopped at the gate. The first man stepped down tall, thin, with Silas's pale eyes but colder somehow. I'm Marcus McKenna, he announced. I've come for my cousin's daughter. Sarah stood on the porch, Emma behind her. Rebecca nowhere to be seen already on the morning stage. Officially. There's no McKenna daughter here, Sarah said. Marcus pulled out papers. Emma McKenna, born 1874, daughter of Silas McKenna. Emma McKenna died of fever at 3 months, Minister Henderson said, appearing with his church ledger. I performed the burial myself, August 5th, 1874. He showed the entry, ink aged but clear. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's impossible. We have letters. Proof she lived. You have proof a girl named Emma lived, Luke said. Our daughter, Emma Garrison. Emma stepped forward, chin high. I've never been anyone else. Marcus studied her face. Those green eyes. You look like my mother, Emma said, taking Sarah's hand. Everyone says so. The other cousins climbed down from the wagon. Paul, the riverboat owner, walked with a cane, though he wasn't old. Benjamin, the lawyer, carried a leather case. Samuel, the banker, stayed back, counting something in a small notebook. "We'll need proof," Benjamin said. "Birth records, adoption papers." "Burned last night," Henderson said sadly. "Terrible fire in the church records room. Lost everything from the last decade." "The county office also had a fire," Sam Pickens said. "Suspicious. Really. 2 fires in one night." Marcus's face went red. "You destroyed them. Deliberately." "Destroyed what?" Sarah asked. "Records that didn't exist, hard to destroy, nothing." Paul limped forward, cane tapping on the ground. "The girl is clearly McKenna blood. Look at her eyes, her face." "Lots of folks have green eyes," Martha said. "My grandmother had eyes just that color, Cherokee blood. They said, 'The child's no Indian.'" "How would you know?" Martha's voice could have frozen July. "You ever seen Cherokee, Cheyenne, Shoshone? We don't all look the same." Benjamin opened his case, pulled out documents. "We have testimony," Jake Morrison wrote. "Jake Morrison was a drunk and a liar," Tom said, his voice steady though his hands shook. "Everyone knows that. My pa would say anything for money." "You're his son." "Exactly. I know what he was." Tom pulled out the edited journal. "See for yourself. Pages of lies and schemes. Not a word of truth in it." Benjamin grabbed the journal, flipped through. The pages about Emma were gone, burned to ash. Only the crimes remained. The murders and frauds and corruptions. "This proves nothing about the girl," he said. "Proves plenty about you," Marshal Brennan said, appearing with federal badges behind her. "Marcus McKenna, you're named in 3 murders in Texas. Paul McKenna, riverboat insurance fraud. Should I continue?" The cousins looked at each other, calculating odds. Samuel finally spoke, his banker's voice soft. "How much?" "What?" Sarah asked. "How much to admit the truth? We'll pay, generously." Emma laughed, sharp and bright. "You want to pay us to lie, to say I'm someone I'm not?" 50,000, Samuel said. "No, 100,000. Emma walked to Marcus, looked up at him with those green eyes that might or might not have been McKenna eyes. "There is no amount," she said clearly, "because there is no Emma McKenna. She died as a baby. I'm sorry for your loss." Marcus raised his hand like he might strike her. Luke's rifle came up. Martha's pistol cleared leather, and suddenly every person in the yard was armed and aimed. "Touch her and die," Sarah said simply. Marcus lowered his hand, stepped back. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Rebecca's voice came from behind them. Everyone turned. She stood there in different clothes, hair pinned different, spectacles on her face. A complete stranger. "I'm Ruth Thornton," she said. "Rebecca's twin sister. I came to inform you that my sister died in California last year. Consumption. She left letters about her infant daughter who died of fever." She produced papers. Death certificates for both. Notarized. Legal. The cousins stared. The resemblance to Emma was undeniable, but this woman looked nothing like the Rebecca they'd been told about. "You're lying," Paul said. Ruth/Rebecca smiled. "I've been teaching in California for 8 years, never left. Check the records, check with my students. 20 children who'll swear Miss Ruth never missed a day." Marcus looked at his cousins, at the armed families, at the federal marshals waiting to arrest them. "Get back in the wagon," he told the others. "Marcus," Benjamin started. "Now." They climbed up, Samuel still calculating in his notebook, Paul muttering curses, Benjamin clutching his useless papers. Marcus looked at Emma one more time. "You have her eyes." "My mother's eyes," Emma agreed. Looking at Sarah, Marcus climbed into the wagon. As it pulled away, he called back, "The McKenna fortune will go to someone, if not her. Then distant cousins who never even met Silas. That what you want?" "Give it to the families you destroyed," Emma called back. "Every penny?" The wagon disappeared into the dust. The families stood watching until it was gone, guns still ready. "Think they'll come back?" Tom asked. "No." Marshal Brennan held up a telegram. "Just got word. Federal investigation into McKenna Holdings. Every cousin named. They'll be too busy staying out of prison." People dispersed slowly. reluctant to believe it was over. But finally, only Sarah's family remained: Luke, Emma, and Rebecca, still dressed as Ruth. "You can take those off," Sarah said, meaning the spectacles. Rebecca removed them, became herself again. "I meant what I said. About California. The teaching position. We know, but I could visit. Summers, maybe. Christmas." Emma hugged her suddenly, fierce and tight. "I'd like that, Aunt Ruth." Rebecca laughed, tears running down her face. "Aunt Ruth, I can live with that." They stood there in the morning light, smoke clearing, future uncertain but theirs to choose. Sarah's hand found her belly again, the life growing there still secret, still safe. "Mama," Emma said, "what do we do now?" Sarah looked at their burned barn, their standing house, their chosen family. "Now we build. Better than before." Luke put his arm around her. "The barn? Everything. Barn, fences, family." She smiled. "Room for more children. This one and maybe others." Emma's eyes widened. "You're... December. I think... maybe January." Emma hugged her carefully, like Sarah might break. "I'll teach them everything. Reading and writing and how to stand up to bullies. And how to whistle," Sarah added. "Every child should know how to whistle danger." Rebecca Ruth now picked up her bag. "I should catch the noon stage, establish my alibi." "Will you really come back?" Emma asked. "Every summer, I promise." She kissed Emma's forehead. "My brave girl, braver than I ever was." She walked toward town, toward her new life as Ruth, leaving Rebecca buried with the McKenna name. Sarah watched her go, then turned to what remained: her husband, her daughter, her home. "Papa," Emma said to Luke, "when we rebuild the barn, can we make it bigger?" "Why bigger?" "For all the animals we'll have, horses and cows and chickens." She smiled. "I want to name them all, give them good lives. After everything, you still want chickens. Especially chickens. Penny and Biscuit and Rosie deserve to be remembered." Luke ruffled her hair. "Then we'll have the finest chicken coop in Wyoming." They walked toward the house together, planning their future on the ashes of the past. Behind them, the sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the smoke. But Sarah noticed something that made her stop. There, in the dirt by the gate, fresh wagon tracks. Not from the McKenna cousins' wagon, these were different, deeper, like the wagon carried heavy cargo. And beside the tracks, a small mark in the dust. A symbol she recognized from Luke's war stories. The mark of the Pinkertons. Someone was still watching, someone still cared about Emma McKenna, even if she no longer existed. Let me tell you what I really learned from the Garrison story. It wasn't about the land, or the water rights, or even little Emma's inheritance. It was about what happens when neighbors become family, when strangers become shields against the darkness. You see, when those families stood in that church, each one carrying their own losses and fears, they made a choice. Not the easy choice of minding their own business, but the hard choice of standing together. The Hendersons risking their ministry. Martha Sundown sharing her dead husband's gun. Even Tom Morrison going against his own father's memory. That's what community means. In our modern world, we've forgotten this truth. We lock our doors, avoid eye contact, pretend the family next door isn't our concern. But the Garrisons survived because when McKenna came calling, their neighbors answered. When the barn burned, hands appeared to rebuild it. When lies needed to become truth to save a child. An entire valley rewrote history together. That's the real inheritance Emma received, not McKenna money, but something worth more. The knowledge that she belonged to something bigger than blood, stronger than law. A community that would lie to federal marshals, burn records, and face down hired guns for one of their own. This story was inspired by classic Western frontier tales, created solely for entertainment purposes. It does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence or harmful behavior. All characters and events are products of the author's imagination, and any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental.